Hey everybody, what's up? Frank Fradella here with Rebecca Jane Boswell on the Art of Creation show. Here's week number 4, and we're doing something a little different this week. This is kind of our production offices kind of meeting after the shows to kind of talk about what we've learned from our guests, how we've applied it, and anything that came up for us. We thought, instead of just talking to other people, we talk to each other.
Huh.
And
Go figure. And we'd actually allow you guys to be a part of this conversation because we actually do talk to each other.
yeah, yeah. So this is
we'll include you all in this today.
right. So like a lot of this came about from Rebecca and I talking like this. And it would be fun if blah blah blah. And what you got was a show out of that. So go you.
How'd you get so lucky?
You get so lucky that we're spitstorming and we're brain spitballing and brainstorming, not spitstorming.
Yeah.
Spitstorming would be messy.
Brainballing and spitstorming. Yeah. We'll just reverse it and yeah, we're good.
All of a sudden I've got this idea of right.
And carrying on. So so we have had 3 amazing guests and total creators of magnitude. Right. And yeah, I mean, Frank, what has this opened? What have these conversations opened up for you in these last few weeks so far?
Cool. Well, that's a big question, right? Because I got something from everybody.
Yeah.
And so for me, talking to Heather Nichols, one of the reasons why we wanted to bring in Heather was because she is such a great creator of businesses. And originally, like you and I are both traditionally creative, like in terms of like arty, crafty kind of stuff. And we also create in this other space of business. So we're like, oh, wouldn't it be kind of like turning it on its head to show how creation can include business? And like, we think we're being so clever about this. And then it's like, no, she was in ballet for years and she did this. And like, she came from the creative space. Like that was her wheelhouse. And then it was like, it was nothing for her to take that energy and just apply it to business.
Yeah. And actually, and we think we said it too, sort of like she has this energy of dancing through her life and dancing through her creations and creating business from that energy, so that there is still this play and this fun, and there isn't this rigidity of business that we often associate business with. So yeah, there is this thread that she just naturally weaves through her authenticity and through, choosing to actually be what she has come to acknowledge as herself and her strengths and her potency and where her fun and her joy lie. Wow. Like you can actually create from there. Who knew?
So that was the cool thing, right? Like everything that she was talking about seemed to come from this energy of play, right? Yeah. It wasn't like ordinarily, like
if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it.
Right. Yeah. Her total idea was like, yeah, if it's not fun, I'm not having it. Like, right. Whereas like I've started businesses, and I remembered when I started a business in Austin, Texas, I had a language company, and we were seeking funding because we needed a physical space. Ordinarily, when I start a business endeavor, it's just kind of fun. And I use whatever I have on hand and I make it happen with what I've got. And that worked pretty well on a smaller scale. And I wanted to take this bigger. So they were like, well, the first thing you need is a business plan, which is this really ordered structure.
A business plan. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, let's just suck the joy out of this. Right. So part of that was useful, not discrediting the entire process, because there are parts of it that were like, okay, well, looking at the numbers here, I can see that there's a market segment that I haven't really fully thought about that could generate a lot of revenue for me. So in the respect that was helpful, but she operates from this place, talking about Heather, where she never had the point of view that she couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. So her parents were entrepreneurs. So this whole thing about how like, yeah, no. My parents created businesses and I was just always going to create a business. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And then at first it was this business and then it was that business. And then I was just like, right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if she's ever held like a real job ever. Right. Like it's always like No, I'm just going to create and I'm going to play and I'm going to make money and I'm going to have fun. And when that's not fun, I'll make something else.
Yeah, I think she said she had one for like 10 months, maybe, right? Just for a
Yeah.
second, just to see what that's like and just to sort of confirm that that was not what she was looking to create. I'm sorry, I'm getting headphones just in case I hear an echo. But the other thing too is, you know, she also said, I mean, I remember her saying that, you know, sometimes it wasn't all ease and joy, right? Like one of the things that she started off with was how both joy and tenacity. Oh,
You're good.
can you hear me okay? Okay. Is that better? Does the echo go away?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, she was saying joy and tenacity, right? Like, I won't do it if it's not fun. And also this tenacity of continuously choosing in the process. And so she said, like, sometimes when there would be doubt or there would be this stuff that was coming up, right? She said she would just use her tools. Like, wait a minute, who does this belong to? Is this fear? Is this doubt? Is this like insecurity? Is this even mine? Right. And so she would keep being in the question and being like, wait a minute, I'm in a place right now that is not creating what I would like to create. And so I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to pause and I'm going to ask a question. And if it's not mine, I'm not going to dwell in it and try and fix something that's not even mine. And I'm going to choose beyond it. And I'm going to keep choosing to where where I actually feel light and have that fun again. So it's that thing of like, you know, she was continuously creating from this place of fun, and it wasn't always fun, right? So it's like, you know, it's easy to look and be like, oh, well, that's her story, and like, I can't access that. And yet, really, what she's inviting everybody to is the same possibility, simply by recognizing when things are not going how you'd like
Right.
them to go.
And I never got the impression that she was ever in this place of, oh my God, I hate this. And I'm miserable going to work every day. Like, there are times where it might not have been fun.
Yeah.
You know, but like,
She'd be like, it's not working. What else can I choose?
Right, exactly. Like, it was like, oh, wait, this isn't fun in these
Yeah.
10 seconds. Like, well, what else can I choose here? What would be more fun than this?
Yeah, not
And
like,
then
oh,
just
but I
choose
should be
that.
doing it. So I'm just going to marinate in this. I wish I was doing something else for the next 10 years to please everybody around me, right?
Right. And I can't tell you how much of my career as a graphic artist and as an art director working for like corporations
Yeah.
was spent in this place of dreading going to work every day
Yeah.
and how many health problems that caused for me
Yeah.
and not acknowledging that like that's the problem,
Yeah.
right? So you go to the doctor trying to like, listen, doc, my stomach is bothering me and I, you know, like I can't sleep and I'm having, you know, acid reflux and I'm having all these
Yeah.
problems. And it's just like, what if the prescription there, if I had just been told, quit that job, right? The job is what's killing you.
Yeah.
Like
It
how
was
you
stop
feel about
quitting
the
you.
job. Yeah. Like stop quitting you, right? Like you need to make you the priority here.
Yeah.
Go follow your joy. And like I get, like I say that, and like as I'm coming out of my mouth, I'm already hearing the back talk from future viewers going, easy for you to say, you don't have a blah, 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 and a mortgage and kids and a car payment and a blah, blah. Actually, yes, I have all of those things.
Yeah.
And I still choose this way, and I've created a greater life from it. But that's not always an easy decision for people to make because they
Yeah.
go into the judgment and fear and conclusion. And like, you know,
Yeah.
all of the things that in Access we would call distractor implants, things that are designed
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
stop you choosing greater.
Yeah. Hurdles that we just perceive as completely impassable roadblocks. And so it's like, well, I obviously have no choice, right? It's where we create this no choice universe because we've already sort of systematically decided what all of the possibilities are, what all the choices are, and then
Yeah.
gone through and convinced and justified and rationalized how every single one of those is not possible, right? And then it's like, okay, and now I'm in this box and there's nothing else
So
and I'm stuck
is there an
and
Access
life
term
sucks.
for this kind of pile on that people do emotionally where like if I'm upset about one thing, I'm gonna like you know, if I'm gonna whine about it, then I'm gonna whine about everything, right? And I'm gonna add things to this list. And I call it the end game, where it's like, you know, I'll ask them, what's
Yeah.
wrong? And they're like, oh, you know, I got this I talked to my mother and it made me feel bad. And then, the kids were
Yeah.
cranky, and I was supposed to go out with Julie last night, and she canceled on me at the last minute. And like this one shoe
Yeah.
doesn't fit the same way anymore, and it's really bothering me. And it's just like I'm just looking for reasons to be upset at this point.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing that we do, where we can lump things together
Yeah.
to make it as though all these different things are somehow related, right?
Right.
And in that kind of spiral, that kind of downward spiral, it's really just to prove to yourself that you are actually a piece of shit, or you actually, can't do whatever it is that, you're not choosing, or whatever it is. And, one of the things we can look at in that conversation is something called evidentiary contrivances, where we are actually making up and looking specifically to find evidence for whatever it is that we've come to believe or concluded about, right? Like,
Right.
so if I believe that, I am blank, it's like I'm going to look for everything in my world, in my environment, internally, externally, that proves, justifies, rationalizes how all of that is actually true, which is great if that's actually the reality that you'd like to have. And if it's like heavy and like contracting your world and your space until you can barely breathe, you might want to just try something else and, maybe make a different choice.
Right.
So,
might even be yours to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it's like the first tool, right? Who does this belong to? Or one of the ways that I like to actually ask it is this mine? Because who it belongs to, right? It's like, is it mine? Is it not mine, right? If it's not mine,
that's kind of a
then
binary,
then I would spend my energy wanting to try to fix it. For what reason? Like, right? Like,
so
it's
the other thing that's been I suppose what I've identified as something I'm very grateful for about how I process myself through stuff, which is if I don't need to understand why I felt that way anymore.
Yes.
Like I don't need to
Yes.
get to the root of a thing, and I don't need to dig
Yes.
to find the catalyzing event. I don't need to find any of that stuff.
Yes.
Like I realize that
Yes.
I'm behaving in a way that doesn't work for me, or I'm feeling in a way that isn't fun for me. And I
Yeah.
simply acknowledge that I have a choice to feel differently or to act differently.
Yes.
And so I just go and do that. Like I don't need to know why I was doing the other thing.
Yeah.
I
You
just
don't
acknowledge
have
that
to.
I have the ability to change something and do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to dig into the wound for hours. You don't have to figure out every little piece. In some areas it can, my personal point of view is it can be helpful to become aware of the things that we're functioning from. Sometimes when we're blind to these things, we make it, I guess, easier for ourselves to not ask questions about them and not invite change. But it's not about unearthing and digging stuff up to wallow in it as much as it is to be like, oh, look, I have this nail in my tire. Interesting. Now, instead of like figuring out where the nail came from and like who dropped it there and how long it's been there, and like you take it out and you patch the tire and the nail goes in the garbage, like end of story.
So
right?
there's a very different thing here between like one isolated event that might have caused me to start thinking some way, right? So like, oh, I've been feeling crappy about this. I don't know what that is. Don't care. Moving on.
Yeah.
But then there's this thing where like talking to Heather Nichols, one of the greatest things that she said was that, her parents were entrepreneurs. She never had it in her mind that she wouldn't be one too.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have come from this other place where like, my parents lived in a box. I was expected to live in a box.
Yeah.
Becoming an entrepreneur was a harder journey because like I had to choose something beyond the limitations of my reality.
Yeah.
And I had to choose something that went beyond what my parents chose, what they wanted for me, what the institutions of school chose for me, what everything about was like, how do I fit in?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to break out. And that's much harder for people usually.
Yeah. Well,
growing up in the circus and someone's like, you want to get on the trapeze? And you're like, hell yeah, trapeze.
I've been doing that for years. Why
not?
Sure. Yeah. And, so I'm teaching a foundation class coming up in February. And one of the things that what's that? Oh, February 23rd through 26th in Greenville, South Carolina. So come on down. It's
Cool.
awesome. And one of the things that we look at in this class is contextual reality and also causal incarcerations. And these are kind of those places, what you're talking about, right? Like where we sort of decide, like we look at the context of our lives and then decide where we fit in there, and then that becomes the solid reality, right? And it's like, if we could actually take that and obliterate it, then what could you choose? And the same thing with causal incarcerations. It's like, this happened and therefore this is the result, and you're now imprisoned in that reality. Like there is nothing else possible for you because, right? Like anytime we see because we know we're going into one of these things of like, you know, I fell and scraped my knee once when I was 5 and my mom didn't catch me. So now I am like destined to fall on my face my entire life. And it's all my mom's fault because she didn't catch me that one time when I was 5, right? And now I can never do anything my entire life, right? That is a causal incarceration.
My take on causal incarceration is one of my favorites. One of the ways that I play with the tools of access is I do the Geek's Guide to Consciousness.
Yeah, so cool.
And so I find that most geeks and people who read science fiction and fantasy have already had this kind of awareness expanding education where like a lot of this stuff goes beyond, like you watch The Matrix and about these, you know, what is real and what isn't real, and like how to choose, and like, you know, choice creates awareness. Like there's a lot of this stuff that happens in sci-fi fantasy. My favorite one by far is causal incarceration, because everybody knows who Batman is.
Mm-hmm.
And Batman is the poster child for causal incarceration. I am this way because my parents were murdered in front of me when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Right? And that's it. That literally, he never grew past that event.
Yeah.
And as a billionaire, as an adult, Bruce Wayne is constantly saying, I want to save Gotham City. And I keep going, no, you don't. Because if you actually wanted to save Gotham City, you would take your billions of dollars and put every kid through college, or you'd create social programs, or you'd create free education, right? I mean, like literally, you'd create more businesses that could employ more people. Like you could save Gotham City in like an hour by writing a check, right? You really could, right? You could, but instead you want to run around in pajamas and punch people in the mouth one at a time.
Because he's decided that that's the one and the only way. Yes.
Right, and because it was one guy with a gun who killed his parents, he's like, now I don't like criminals, and I'm going to run around and punch them in the mouth one at a time, and that's how I'm going to save Gotham, right? Because my parents were murdered in front of me.
Yeah,
and he's trapped in that, and it's affected him in every way imaginable. And look at how many ways that you've done that, right? Not you, but people, right?
So like, you found me out.
But Batman's like only other friends are either other kids like Robin and Batgirl, right? Or a father figure in Alfred, right? He doesn't have any peer friends. Because he's not an adult.
Yeah.
Right? It's so like when you realize that like Batman's like psychotic, like he's just not well. He shouldn't go around punching that, like, and like none of Batman's enemies go to prison. They all go to Arkham Asylum because they're criminally insane. So all he's doing is running around punching the mentally ill. He's really got a problem here. Right?
Okay, so no one is going to be able to look at Batman now. See the causal reality that's being created now, Frank. You will have now ruined Batman for everyone for all eternity.
Well, my work here is done.
So everything that is can be destroyed and uncreated all. So hey, I just wonder, would it be fun to just run a clearing? Sure, and maybe explain a little bit what the heck that is for anybody who's now wondering what's a clearing.
Yeah.
So because this whole thing, we do use the tools of access consciousness, Frank and I, in our personal lives, in our businesses, and one of the things that comes with that when we choose it is this clearing statement, which the first time that I heard it, I was like, and what is that?
Yeah.
Total alien gobbledygook, right? And what it does is it essentially is addressing certain energies that we are then clearing. So I kind of look at it as like when we ask questions, it's like shaking a rug and all the dust and all the flotsam and jetsam are like flying around in the air. And then we take this little dust buster and we suck it all up, and that is the clearing statement. So that's how I look at that. And is right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And if you are like, I don't really get that, and there's something more there that I'd like to know, there is a website called theclearingstatement.com, so you can check that out. And you can get yourself to the nearest bars class ASAP. I happen to have one tomorrow if you want to come to Greenville. And that will be a full day of not only learning an awesome body process called the bars, it will also introduce you a little bit more to the clearing statement. And actually,
So
yeah.
just for those watching right now, this show was recorded a week in advance. So
yeah, I was just going to say, you don't get this.
Right now.
You can't come to my I'm actually, in this moment that you're watching, I am actually in Austria. So that's not going to work. However, what else is possible next time? Anyway, get yourself to a bars class and you can learn more. So all of that.
Hang on, I got to go more into the clearing statement, because the thing, the first day that I heard it, again, I didn't choose access. I showed up, there stuff, crazy stuff was happening, right? And one of there were two things for me that made the clearing statement really valuable and useful from the get-go. Which when he talks about right and wrong. Mm-hmm. What he means in that, when he's saying that, or when they're saying that, is all of the places that you've decided that you were right and all of the places that you decided you were wrong.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned on the show with Corey Michelle, the places that really stick us are the places that we've already decided we got right.
Yes.
Those are the places you're not willing to look at. You're not willing to change. You're not willing to re-examine. Well, maybe I was wrong there. Like maybe there was another choice I could have made there. Like when you've decided you've got it right, you've closed that off from other possibility. Yeah. That was useful for me.
Yes.
The other one was they talked about the point of creation, point of destruction, which is what POC and POD means. Yeah. So this blew my mind because I got that right away. And here's how this changed my life the first time I heard it. I was in this class, Being You, Changing the World, with Dr. Dane here, and he said this clearing statement, and he took very briefly kind of went through what each of those things meant. It took maybe 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. But when he said POC and POD, point of creation, point of destruction, that's like going back to the point of creation and undoing whatever it was that stuck you in this thing. Yeah. And I was like, well, where have I done that? And I realized that this relationship that I had been in, a really unhealthy, damaging relationship that I had been in for more than 20 years, I was in that relationship because back when I was 3 years old, I had made a decision about what love was and about what true love was and what a real relationship looked like. And because I had made that decision, I had decided that that was right. I was unwilling to look at any other possibility because that's where I got it right. And so the way that I look at this clearing statement is kind of like, you're in a boat, you're in a ship, and you're sailing away from the dock. Mm-hmm. The thing is that you can only get as far away from the dock as your conclusions and judgments will allow you, because they are like lines tying you to the dock. Mm. So that point of creation, that point where I decided what love was, once I realized that that's what was holding me back, I sent the dinghy back to the fucking dock and cut the rope. And like for like 20 years of bullshit, it didn't change where I was in the water. I didn't have to go all the way back to the beginning. I simply stopped myself from stopping myself from moving forward anymore. Mm-hmm. So that for me, that's the best testimony I can give to what the clearing statement can do. And in that awareness of, I've been doing this to myself the whole time. And once I cut that rope, watch what happened over the next year of my life, because that's what led me to here today with Rebecca Jane Boswell, talking to you about limitations and choosing more and having stuff.
You know, in Hawaiian, so I used to live in Hawaii and did a fair amount of study and work with some of the ancient Hawaiian traditions. And one of the things that they talk about is the aka cord. And cutting the aka cord, that is like what holds you back to things in your life that essentially keep you from moving forward. And so when you describe it that way with the dinghy and the line and the tether, it just struck me as like, yes, that's just another way of looking at it. And, you know, the thing with these tools too is that for me, they really speak to a lot of things that I have heard, I've learned, I've studied, I've been exposed to over the course of at least this lifetime, and who knows however many other lifetimes. And so there is this familiarity, and you see these bits and pieces all over the place, and yet the tools are just so simple that, you know, it just pulls it in together. So it's so practical. And even though it's a crazy phrase, like it's a crazy statement,
Yeah.
used to be a page long actually, and now it's been reduced, and it still contains the same power. And in the beginning, you know, I mean, look, I am the first one to confess I'm a collector of expensive papers. Okay, I have a master's degree in cultural anthropology. I have a master's in business administration. I have an executive leadership coaching certificate from Columbia University in New York. I have a, you know, integrative nutrition thing from New York for holistic health coaching. I like, and, right? Like, I have always loved to learn, have always been studying. I mean, look, these are like just the books that I don't have in boxes. Okay. Like, information for me is a thing. Okay. I love it. And through all that, right, like I was taught to receive information, evaluate information, process information, and then be able to explain information and give evidence and proof for how and why that exists, okay?
Right.
And so when I came to Access, well, again, like, it sort of just showed up, right? It just was like, oh, yes, right? My brain couldn't compute the how and the why. And yet I got it was a yes. And then I started using the tools, and there was this really weird period for quite a while that went in like in some areas it was more than others, where I really wasn't sure how to present this to the world and admit that it was so dynamically useful in my life. I didn't have a way to explain why and how. And so that for me was a real tripping point. Like, wait, you say these weird words and then things change. So where's the documentation? Where are the studies?
Sure.
Where do we have like the mechanical apparatus that measures this and gives us quantitative data that proves it's real, right? So, so anyway, I just wanted to share this. If you play with this, right, what would it take to just suspend, like, just, you know, suspend all, like in the theater, right? Like there's a certain amount of, like, when you watch a show, there's just a certain amount of reality that you're just willing to let go of in order for the play to be possible, right? So, so like, what would it take to just play with this and just see how things change, even if there isn't a good explanation for how and why? So anyway,
I tend to think that most stuff, now bear in mind, there was a short period in college where I went to school to be an astrophysicist.
Cool.
Science is important to me. Like, I believe in the scientific method, right? But I also am very well aware of something that I think it was Isaac Asimov said, that any significantly advanced technology would be indistinguishable from magic, right? So if you were to travel back in time and pull out a cell phone, right, nobody in that era could tell you why that thing worked, and it would look like magic. It doesn't mean it is. There's simply, I believe, a lot of science we haven't nailed down yet.
Exactly. I actually, there's a recording on my website of a recording I did a while back with Julia Sotis, another certified facilitator with Access. And I say the same thing. I mean, the way I look at it, science, magic is just science that hasn't been discovered yet. And
Right.
actually, I use that same analogy of the cell phone. Like, if you were to tell me that I could talk to someone on the other side of the world through the air, I mean, that's absurd. And yet it's not. We have a device, and possible, because without the device, we said that was not possible. Now we have this new technology, and what else is possible? So yeah, like, what if all this magic or the woo-woo stuff is actually just
Sure.
something where we're catching back up?
Right. So there's soft sciences, right? I mean, there's hard science, like, if I
Yeah,
wire this board to do this particular function, it can do this thing.
yeah,
And like
yeah,
you look at NASA, circa 1969, when they put a man on the moon,
yeah.
you had a whole bunch of really smart people in a room with like slide rulers. I mean, like making course adjustments for these guys, doing math, like really doing math.
Yeah,
And like my phone can run the space program
yeah,
circa 1969, right?
yeah.
Like I have more computing power on my phone than all of NASA did in 1969.
Amazing.
So if I had told you that before, you would have told me it was impossible,
Yeah,
right? If I told you that 20 years ago, you would have told me it was impossible. So I also think that there's soft sciences, ways that we approach the universe and interact with the universe, and things
yeah,
that we're learning to do that unlock things or open up things,
yeah,
things which previously would have required decades of therapy and really painful, dragging through the muck kind of things that we're able to clear really quickly with
yeah,
the tools that we've got in access.
yeah,
And I don't want to call that stuff magic. I just want to call it a science that's not codified in the scientific method, right? But if all you needed was, does this work? Is it repeatable?
yeah.
It's like, then
Does
yeah,
it work for me?
does it work for me? Right?
Yeah,
So, and for me, a lot of this is quantum physics. And I know I keep giving the same lecture on this thing, but the whole spinning coin thing, the Schrodinger's cat analogy, right? So as long as you're living in the question that, when you flip a coin, while it's spinning, that coin is both heads and tails, and it's both and neither at the same time. It
yeah,
lives in the state of infinite possibility. And it isn't until you stop and come to a conclusion where you lock it down
yeah,
and it becomes one or the other,
yeah.
right? And that's not me talking. That's physics. That's just the way the universe works.
Mhm.
So the question here is like, how far are you willing to take that? Are you willing to accept that your life is a particle in space, that you are made up
Yeah,
of these particles that you can either
yeah,
choose to live in the question of, or you can come to conclusions. And when you come to conclusion, you lock yourself down.
yeah.
So
That's why
thank
I
you. Good night,
love.
everybody.
Yay! That's one of the reasons that I love any of the questions that start with what energy, space, and consciousness can I be, and to be, whatever your question is. I often my body into that as well. So I will ask, what energy, space, and consciousness can my body and I be to have more ease with this? If something is a little wonky, or to have greater awareness around this, if I'm looking for clarity, or I'm not really sure about something, or what energy, space, and consciousness can my body and I be to have greater allowance? Sometimes I have a lot of awareness and it's really intense because they have either resistance, or there's a part of me that is not in allowance of what's showing up, right? So when we can ask, what energy, space, and consciousness can we be, we're actually asking we're actually asking, like, okay, universe, what is possible here, right? To be like, there's so many different energies that we can choose to be, right? And so what is available to me right now that I could be aware of? What space can I be, right? If I'm contracted in that box, if I'm contracted in the solidity of that conclusion or that decision or that judgment, right? I'm blocking out so many different things. So if I'm going to, instead of being that solidity, if I'm going to be the space, again, I open myself up to greater possibility, right? And greater choice, things
Yeah.
that I can choose. And then the consciousness, right? Consciousness is just everything. It judges nothing, and it is the ultimate oneness, right? So if I can also have access to that instead of just the limiting points of view that create this reality that I'm in, right? Then again, what else can be available here?
And it's super important at
So
this point to point out that what you said about it judges nothing, right? So this is where I feel everybody gets stuck, where it's just like the second you go into, well, yeah, I'd like to have more ease with my body, but you can't just have, you can't do that, right? Like, boom, conclusion, you're done. You've just cut yourself off from any possibility of having greater because you've already decided what you can have.
Yep. You turned off the faucet right there. You ask the question, you start turning it on, and then you go into a conclusion, a judgment, and you just turn it right back off.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where that staying in the question piece. So then we can also say, we can use this clearing statement that we're talking about, right? Because we can ask a question that opens up all the possibility, right? And then before everything starts to rush in, that down and make that impossible, right? We can actually say, okay, well, anything that doesn't allow that to show up,
Pocket pop.
can we destroy and uncreate it all, right? Like, can we just obliterate it all, right? And if it's yes, we're willing to do that, or at least some pieces of it, we can clear it with the clearing statement: right and wrong, good and bad, pod and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. So this is a really simple tool. We ask a question, right? We allow all of the stuff to start to come up that's going to be in opposition to that. We ask ourselves, okay, so can we destroy and uncreate it all? Are we willing? Will we choose it? Can we choose it? If we get that it's a yes, right? We can run the clearing statement and actually begin to dissipate, eliminate the energies there, so that we actually have a little bit more ease and a little bit more ease and maybe a lot of bit more ease, right? And as we keep the practice going.
Yeah.
So let's just really quick. So what evidentiary contrivances, what causal incarcerations, and what conclusions around our contextual realities have we been using to absolutely limit and eradicate the choice and the creation of a fabulous life and living that we could be choosing? So anything that doesn't allow that to show up with total ease right away, can we destroy and uncreate all of that?
Hell yeah.
Yes. Okay. Right, wrong, give it on up. Right, wrong, good, bad, puck, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Super cool. And what creative capacity and what capacities with creation do we and our bodies have that we could be choosing, that we have been refusing, that if we would choose it, would actually allow us to show up as the mega creators that we truly be? So everything that doesn't allow that to show up, can we destroy and uncreate it all?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Awesome.
Cool.
So amazing. Like, I already get how that energy is changing and how fun that can be. So I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, what just happened? What was that? And what would it take to have more of that?
Yeah. So listen, this has been our kind of breakaway show. This is just time for Rebecca and I to kind of like do this kind of like just take a look at what we've talked about over the past month and kind of just bring it together with she and I and see what awarenesses we've had. Yeah. And I love that we get to include you in this. If you've got any questions for us, please leave them in the comments below. Contact either one of us on the Art of Creation Show on Facebook page. And go back, watch the other videos if you haven't seen them yet. There's some great conversations there with Corey Michelle, Stephanie Richardson, Heather Nichols. Fantastic work over this past month. I'm so proud of what we've done here and what we've created. And we will
and how I wonder in what ways we can now create, how we can now create each show. and what would you like to see as the viewers and as co-creators really of this experience? There are a lot of things that we talked about so far with the creators of magnitude that we've had on the show, and there are going to be a lot of things that come up in the future with additional guests on the show. And the more that you are willing to ask questions and contribute your contribution, yeah, the more that we can really make this a rich and contributive conversation, really not just for us, also for the planet. And I wonder how many things we can change together just by looking at what is possible, especially right now at a time when a lot of people are experiencing a lot of the distractors of fear and anger and things that can cause a lot of distraction from the present moment, distraction from ourselves and from our potency, and also create a lot of separation, again, with parts of ourselves as well as with others in our lives, in our communities, in the world. And so I just wonder, what can we contribute to each other by asking questions, and what would you like to know more about, hear more about? What are things you would like to clear or change the energy around? And what would you like to know about creation, creativity, any of that? So it's been such a blessing and a joy to start this show. And Frank, I'm so grateful to you that we're able to choose this space and this creation together. And I just wonder, like, what is this? And yeah, and what is the journey we're on? And I just love to be on it and to see every time a new piece shows up.
Thanks, Rebecca. And thank you all for watching. We will see you next
Yes.
week. You guys be
Next week.
awesome to yourselves and excellent to each other. Take care.
Yes. Mwah.